Hi guys, thank you so much for tuning into my channel. Today we are going to be making black cake. So it is a fruit cake made with macerated fruit. If you guys remember, I made these jars back in June. So they have been sitting in my cupboard up until now, and I am ready to make my cakes. I will put the ingredients for the macerated fruit in the description box, and yeah, we'll go ahead and make a black fruit cake. So for a cake, you will basically just need one jar, and one of these jars is equals to 1.5 cups. So yeah, let's just go ahead and make the black fruit cake. So this is the recipe for one cake. All the ingredients are going to be listed in the description box, and I'm going to be writing everything down in grams because I do find that you make better recipes when you have the ingredients in grams rather than in cups and sticks. So we're going to first off start with butter. We're going to need 250 grams of butter, and this is a room temperature butter, so it is already soft. I'm just gonna put that in, and usually I do use my stand mixer, but because I'm doing this for YouTube, I decided to just use my hand mixer. The next thing I'm going to add is 225 grams of sugar. Now I am using demerara golden sugar, but you can use white sugar or darker brown sugar. So the goal is to cream the sugar and the butter. Okay, so we basically mixed the sugar and the butter for about 2 minutes. The next thing we're going to do is add in the eggs, and we're going to be using 3 eggs, and we will add the eggs one at the time. Now, don't do as I did. When you are making your cake, please don't crack the egg next to the bowl because we don't want to have shells inside. This is basically what the mix looks like right now. The next thing we're going to do is add some lime zest, and we are also going to add some orange zest. So you can use a lemon zest too. I didn't have oranges with me, but I did have a mandarin, and that's what I'm going to be using instead of the orange. So we just mixed that in to make sure that everything was incorporated, and again, for the zest, you're using about half a teaspoon of lime zest and half a teaspoon of orange mandarin zest. The next thing we're going to do is add our essence. So we're just going to add about half a teaspoon of pure almond essence, and we're also going to add the same amount, so half a teaspoon of vanilla essence or extract. So it's obviously the purer vanilla you use, the better. I don't have pure vanilla, so I'm just using artificial vanilla today. But what the vanilla that I really like is Mexican vanilla. That's what I usually use, but I didn't have any. So we're just going to mix that in. And now we are going to add our beautiful jar of macerated fruits. So you can, if you're using a standing mixer, then you can just let everything keep mixing and then just pour that in. I recommend that if you're using a hand mixer to just at this point just forego the whisk and just use a scraper or a spoon to fold it in. Okay, I know you guys can't smell this, but this smells divine. This is my mixture. So again, as I mentioned, I made this mixture back in June, and it has a red label wine. So that's basically a sweet wine, more like a sherry or a sweet port. And then it also has rum, and I used the Ray and Nephew. So all the measurements are going to be in the description box. So we're just going to go ahead and pour that in. It's going to pour all the jar in. Okay, you guys know what? I'm just going to whoa, the alcohol. I swear to God, you have 1 tablespoon of this and you're probably going to cure all types of ailments that you have. It is delicious. But you guys remember, this has been sitting for about 6 months in my cupboard. So we're just going to go ahead and fold everything in. It's going to look like a lot of cake. We're just gonna make sure that it's all nice and folded in. So the reason why I actually added my macerated fruit this early is because the batter that I make is it's a bit dense, but when you are at this stage, this is the most liquidy stage that you have, and it's going to be easier for me to incorporate all the spices. So once I have the fruit, the macerated fruit nicely mixed in, I'm going to just go ahead and add in my spices. So for my spices, I'm going to go ahead and add a 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg. I'm going to add 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon. I'm going to add a 1/4 teaspoon of allspice. And finally, I'm going to add about 1/8 teaspoon of clove. So you don't have to add the extra clove because it's already included in the allspice, but I like my cake more clovey, so I'm just gonna add that. And we're just going to go ahead and mix that in. It smells delicious. But yeah, so the fruits have been in the jar for about 6 months, so the level of alcohol is intense. We're just going to keep on mixing until everything is fully incorporated. And now I'm going to add my dry ingredients. As you guys can see here, I have my flour. So this is just all-purpose unbleached flour, and this is 200 grams of flour, which comes to about 1.5 cups of flour. And I also added 1 teaspoon of baking powder, which is about 4 grams of baking powder. So we're just going to go ahead and pour that in. And we'll go ahead and mix that together. So as I said, I usually just use my my stand mixer for this, but you can just whisk it in if you like. or use a spatula like I'm doing right now to just make sure that all the sides are incorporated and everything is just scraped into the mix. Okay, so now the batter is almost ready. The last thing you need is some browning, and that's basically a caramel sauce that will darken the cake. It is called a black cake, so we do want it to be darker. You can make your own browning or you can buy browning. So I am using Mr. Gouda's browning. This is available almost in any grocery store in Canada. I bought mine at No Frills. So this is it here, and we are just going to use 1/8 of a cup. So it's very concentrated and a little bit goes a long way. So this is how dark it looks, and we're just going to pour that in. And just go ahead and mix that. And you can just see the cake getting darker and darker. And you guys always know with baking, even though it still does not look completely black, here as it bakes, it's going to look even darker than this. So one thing I do want to preface is that when you're making the cake, you will feel like this is a lot of batter, but it actually is not that much batter. It's not a lot of batter. The cake is very dense, so even though we do have baking powder, it will come out more so like a fudgy texture, and you have to keep in mind that it's not going to rise a lot. So as you put it in, it's not going to rise a lot, and as it cools, it might even sink a little bit because of the compact texture that it's going to have. Some people's batters have more liquid because they use more eggs. I don't use as many eggs, so that's why the batter is a little bit on the thicker side. It looks like a chocolate cake, but all I can smell is Christmas and a rummy Christmas. So again, you have to make sure that you're scraping everything. So it smells like Christmas and booze. Make sure you scrape everything from the bottom to the top. Get everything mixed in. And here you go. So as you guys can see, we have everything mixed in and our batter is ready. The next thing we're going to do is just get our pan ready. This is just a personal preference. You can butter your pan. For me, I'm just going to be using liquid coconut oil. So I'm just going to spray a bit, especially on the sides. Just go ahead and make sure that is oiled in. And I'm actually using this for my lined paper. So I'm still going to put some parchment paper. So you just go ahead and put that parchment paper and close that in. Just gonna get my scissors to just cut off some of the excess side. So some people just for me, I'm just a fan of parchment paper. I hate risking it and having to scrape. And again, this is the cake that's going to be baking for about 2 hours. So I don't want anything to stick. So I do spray some coconut oil, but I really do it to have the parchment paper stick. And honestly, when you use a parchment paper, it's going to be so easy to get the cake out at the end. Okay, so it looks a bit messy, but this is just about enough for the batter, so I'm just gonna go ahead and pour my batter in. I'm making a mess. Okay, so I have about half of my batter in. Just had to fix the paper a little bit. I'm just gonna go ahead and pour in the rest. And I'm using a 8-inch cake tin. I think it's a... The batter is so delicious. Like, I could literally just eat the whole batter. So I am using my spatula again to make sure that I scrape in everything. So now we're just gonna get everything pretty as we can, and we filled about 2/3 of the baking tin. If you want now, you can cut some of the excess parchment paper. So I went ahead and I cut the excess parchment paper. Like I said, this is not a cake that's going to rise a lot, so you're not putting in parchment paper to prevent it from spilling. You're really just putting it to prevent it from sticking. So the reason why I cut the excess parchment paper is because the top can end up being fully baked, and you might need to cover it up with some aluminum foil to prevent it from over baking or burning. But just going to go ahead and pop this in the oven at 200 degrees Fahrenheit for about 2 hours. Depending on your oven, what I recommend is checking the cake every 30 minutes by in the first 30 minutes you can just eyeball it, and then after you can just poke in I'm going to be using a wooden skewer to poke into my cake to just make sure that it's cooked. When it is fully cooked, it will still be moist, so you may still see some cake on the you will still see some cake on the sticks or the toothpick that you're using, but you will see that there's just very little cake, and it just goes in and comes out without pulling in extra batter. So that's what it's going to look like, and I'm also going to show you guys once this is ready. So I'm just going to go ahead and pop this in my oven. Okay guys, so this is what the cake looks like straight out of the oven. You can see some cracks at the top, but that's no problem because we're actually going to flip the cake upside down. This is what our cake looks like. So you might want to wait a little bit before flipping it over because the pan might be hot, but this is what our cake looks like. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to brush it with this mixture. So this is a red wine and rum mixture. So red wine is basically a type of is basically whatever sherry you want to use, and we're just going to go ahead and basically soak the cake a little bit with this mixture, and this is also just going to keep the cake moist. You don't have to do this step, but if you because it does add a bit more alcohol to the cake, but it just makes sure that nothing dries out. So we're just going to go all over the cake and just add that in, keep everything nice and moist. And now we just took the cake out, so it is still very soft. Like I said, it's going to have a fudgy texture, so we need to let the cake cool down before eating it. So we're just going to let it cool for about 3-4 hours. So it's really easy to make. So this is what our cake looks like. It's super moist. If I just press on it, you'll just see that it'll spring back. It smells delicious. We're just going to wait for it to cool down for a couple of hours and then we'll have a slice later. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you guys for watching, and if you want to see future videos like this, let me know in the comment section. Ciao.